She didn't notice it at first. Too busy laughing, spinning a wine glass between her fingers, retelling some story about a crazy client to people who thought she was fascinating. The purse sat exactly where she left it, on the chair, next to the table with the rosemary bread and untouched oysters. When she finally reached for it, lipstick probably, maybe her compact mirror, I was already gone. She unzipped it mid-conversation. Her fingers dipped in casually, then paused. The velvet box was too familiar. She looked around. The laughter kept going, but she'd stopped hearing it. The note was taped to the inside of the lid. One sentence, written in my handwriting. The one she used to say looked too gentle for a man. Her hands trembled before she even finished reading. And just like that, the smile collapsed. I watched it happen from the car. I parked across the vineyard, behind the row of private event tents. She was standing under the canopy of fairy lights, her perfect world still intact, until it wasn't. She clutched the box like it had burned her. She scanned the crowd like she could find me. She couldn't, because I wasn't there to watch her explain. I wasn't there to hear what lie she'd invent. I wasn't there to listen to her say, "It's not what it looks like," in that same tone she used when she claimed she worked late, 3 weeks ago, for nights in a row. This wasn't revenge. This was a resignation. But if you really want to understand why I left my wedding ring in her purse at her private work party, you'd have to go back. Not far. Just far enough to the moment I realized I wasn't her husband anymore. Just her backup. She once told me that people who ask too many questions are the ones hiding the most. I remember thinking it was clever at the time. Insightful, even. But now I realize it was projection. A warning, disguised as wit. That's the thing with her. The truth was always in plain sight. You just had to know where to look, and I didn't. Not until it was too late. The hallway still smelled like eucalyptus when I came home that Thursday night. She'd just had the place cleaned again. Her way of hitting reset, like you could bleach away tension or mop over mistrust. Her coat was gone from the hook, her keys missing from the bowl. No note, no text, just silence and a single wine glass in the sink with a smudge of lipstick that didn't match anything she owned. I stood there, just staring at it, wondering if I was losing it. Wondering if I'd become that guy, the paranoid husband counting wine stains and second-guessing shadows. But deep down, I wasn't wondering. I knew. The next morning, I went looking. Not for confrontation. I'm not built for that. I went looking for proof I could ignore. Something small enough to excuse, to file under nothing. That's how far gone I was. I didn't want to catch her. I wanted her to almost be guilty. Just enough to worry, not enough to leave. But what I found wasn't small. Her laptop was open on the kitchen island. She'd forgotten to log out. Or maybe she didn't think I'd look. I never had before. That was my mistake. Or maybe it was hers, trusting I'd always be too soft to check. There was a file. A PDF titled Private Party RSVP, Staff Only. Nothing damning at first glance. Just a guest list, a floor plan, a dress code. Until I saw the initials next to hers. +1 NS. That wouldn't mean anything to anyone else. But it hit me like ice down my spine. NS. Nolan Saunders. A name she never said aloud, but one I'd seen pop up on her phone months ago. Once. Just once. When her screen lit up during a movie. Looking forward to tomorrow, winky face. And then it vanished when she tilted the phone away from me. She told me it was her client. A harmless text. I let it go. I always let it go. But there it was again. Next to her name. Not in a private text, but officially, someone she planned to bring, in secret, to a party I wasn't even supposed to know about. I closed the laptop. I didn't throw it. I didn't yell. I just stood there, staring at the floor, feeling like a guest in my own home. My wife had a date for the weekend, and it wasn't me. And that's when the idea of the note was born. Not revenge. Not cruelty. Just the cold, shaking truth, delivered in the same soft packaging I'd always given her. She wouldn't see it coming. She never saw me coming. I was just Everett. Predictable. Forgiving. Safe. I ordered a new ring box that night. Not from a jeweler, but from an online collector. Old velvet, deep navy blue, the kind they don't make anymore. It felt more like a casket than a case. Fitting. The note took longer. I wrote a dozen versions. Angry ones. Sad ones. Some poetic, some sarcastic. But none of them felt right. Until I landed on 7 words that said everything without saying anything at all. I folded the paper 4 times. Small enough to fit neatly inside the box, just behind the ring. The same one I slipped on her finger 6 years ago while promising things I actually meant. And now, all I had to do was wait. For the right night. The right moment. The private party. She'd bring him. She'd think she was untouchable, radiant, clever. She'd laugh. She'd dance. She'd lie. And then she'd reach into her purse. And everything would go still. The morning of the party, she was humming. That detail stuck with me more than anything else. It wasn't a song I recognized, just a soft, tuneless rhythm under her breath while she curled her lashes in the mirror and sipped coffee from the mug I always used. Her hair was pinned the way she never did it for me, loose and effortless, like she wanted it to fall apart by evening. And her perfume wasn't her usual one. It was sharper, bolder, the kind she used to say gave her headaches. Maybe it didn't anymore. Maybe he liked it. She wore a deep navy dress that stopped just above the knees. Tasteful, but risky. She twirled once in the mirror before she turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Do I look okay?" she asked like it mattered. I said she looked beautiful. I meant it. I always had. And then she asked me the question that sealed everything. "Can you drop me off around 6? It's at the vineyard outside town. Parking's gonna be a mess." Not, "Do you want to come?" Not even, "I wish you could be there." Just logistics. Just convenience. I said yes. Of course I did. She tossed her bag on the counter while she went to grab her jacket. That was the window. Less than 20 seconds. I slid the ring box into the inner pocket of her purse, nestled between her travel-size hairspray and the charger she always forgets to use. My fingers didn't shake. Not even once. She didn't notice a thing. The drive was quiet. She stared out the window most of the time, probably rehearsing stories, smoothing over timelines, deciding what version of herself to be tonight. I try not to look at her too much. If I stared long enough, I might have asked her to cancel, to stay home, to explain. But I'd already stopped wanting explanations. I just wanted clarity. When we pulled up, there were white tints glowing against the sunset, soft jazz playing, and waiters walking around with trays of champagne flutes. It looked like something out of a movie. And in the middle of it all, she stepped out of the car like she belonged to that world, sleek, polished, untouchable. She didn't kiss me goodbye, didn't even say it. She just said, "I'll call you if I need a ride," and shut the door before I could respond. I sat there for a while, engine running, pretending like I had something else to do. But I didn't. I just watched. I watched her greet a man in a dark gray suit who reached for her waist like it was second nature. I watched them laugh as they walked through the front arch, already blending in with the glittering guests and curated music. He touched her back too comfortably. She didn't stop him. It didn't hurt like I thought it would. It just confirmed everything. I turned off the engine and left. Not home. Not yet. I drove to the old pier where we had our first date, back when she still thought I was interesting, when she'd actually listen instead of scroll. I sat there on a bench as the sky faded into nothing and thought about all the things I'd done right and all the ones I'd let slide. I thought about every time I said sorry when I wasn't wrong. Every time I let her rewrite the truth because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. And for once, I didn't cry. I didn't feel broken. I felt done. Hours passed. I didn't check my phone. I didn't care if she called. I knew, sooner or later, she'd open her purse. Maybe during a lull in conversation. Maybe in the bathroom mirror. Maybe while searching for her compact in front of him. And when she did, she'd find that box. And she'd open it. And she'd see the ring. And that folded piece of paper with 7 words that would erase her smile in one breath. She'd be surrounded by people. Laughter. Music. Maybe even him standing a few feet away, still thinking she belonged to him. But everything would stop. Because that note wasn't just a goodbye. It was a mirror. And she was about to see what she really looked like, for the very first time. It was nearly midnight when my phone buzzed. One text. No name. Just a string of punctuation. A broken necklace of symbols and panic. What the hell is this? I stared at the screen for maybe 5 seconds before turning it off completely. Not silent. Not airplane mode. Just off. She'd had 6 hours of laughter, expensive wine, ego stroking, and pretending. I figured she could sit in silence for a little while now. I didn't need to guess what she was reacting to. I could picture the moment in perfect detail. Her reaching into the purse, fingers grazing the unfamiliar texture of velvet, that sudden drop in her gut before she even opened it. That flicker of knowing. And then the snap of realization. And then the note. She probably read it twice. Maybe 3 times. trying to decode it like a riddle. But it wasn't one. It was plain, direct, and sharpened like glass. 7 simple words. You finally became someone I had to leave. There's something beautiful about that moment when a liar realizes they've run out of places to hide. It doesn't come with screaming. Not always. Sometimes it's just a stillness, a freezing in place while the walls collapse inward. I wasn't there to see it, but I know Delaney. I know how hard she works to curate her image. I know exactly how it must have looked. The way she clutched the box, how her eyes darted around, trying to find me in a crowd where I never stood. I imagine her scanning the faces, past the man in the gray suit she came with, past the co-workers and wine-poured grins, searching for the one person she never thought would walk away. I didn't walk away in anger. That would have been easier for her. Anger makes people feel righteous. But I left in silence. And silence is something she's never been comfortable with. I thought she'd call. She didn't. She came home instead, around 1:17 a.m. The front door opened too fast, the kind of open that says someone's not sure what they're about to walk into. Her heels clicked across the floor, hesitant at first, then more desperate. She didn't call out my name. She just hovered, like she wasn't sure whether to scream or sob. I was already sitting on the couch when she found me. Lights off. Just the TV globe bouncing off the walls. I didn't look up right away. I didn't need to. She stood there, holding the box. The note still inside, slightly crumpled now. Her mascara had smudged. Her lipstick was gone. Her dress, the one she'd twirled in that morning, had a wine stain across the hip. She looked expensive and broken, like a sculpture someone had dropped on polished tile. "You put this in my bag?" she finally asked, voice raw like she'd rehearsed a dozen other lines before settling on that one. I nodded once. Not smug. Not cruel. Just done. She stepped forward, the box trembling in her hand like it was radioactive. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone. You planned this." I didn't respond. I'd spent years giving her words. Now, she could sit with mine. "You think this makes you powerful?" she whispered. And for the first time in years, I met her eyes without looking away. "No," I said. "It makes me free." The silence that followed was the deepest I've ever heard. She opened her mouth to speak again, but nothing came. Just the sound of her breathing too fast. The ring box dropped to the floor, landing with a soft thud, and she turned and walked into the kitchen, the only room where she still felt in control. I let her go. I didn't ask where she'd been. I didn't ask if he was still in her car. I didn't ask what she was going to tell her friends, her boss, or that man she'd brought to the party like he was her prize. I only asked myself one thing. Why did it take me so long to leave? And in that moment, I realized something even darker. She hadn't broken my heart at that party. She'd already broken it long before. I just finally stopped pretending it could still be fixed. Delaney didn't speak to me the next morning. No slamming doors, no angry monologue, just an eerie, sterile calm that made the walls feel like they were holding their breath. She moved around the house like a ghost, performing the motions of domesticity as if they could erase what happened. She made coffee. She folded laundry. She opened the blinds and then closed them again 5 minutes later. She didn't touch the ring box. It still sat on the floor, exactly where she dropped it. I watched her from the hallway, unseen, as she stood in the kitchen with her phone clutched tight in both hands. She kept unlocking it, scrolling, locking it again, over and over. I knew she was waiting for someone to text her. I knew exactly who, but it wasn't me. When she finally noticed me standing there, she flinched like I'd caught her doing something obscene. And maybe, in a way, I had. "Are you just going to keep watching me like that?" she asked sharply, venom in her voice for the first time in weeks. "No," I replied. "I've done enough watching." She stared at me then, as if trying to decide whether I was bluffing, whether there was still a chance to reel me back in with just the right mix of tears and guilt. That used to work. Not anymore. She turned back to her phone, but I could see it, the panic just beneath her skin. Not panic over what she did. Panic over the fact that I knew. That I didn't shout. That I didn't beg. That I wasn't broken like she expected. She was waiting for the explosion so she could shift the blame. But all I gave her was silence. And it was killing her. By noon, she had changed clothes 3 times. Once into sweats, then into a casual jeans and blouse combo she used for brunches, then finally into the dress she wore to the party. It still had the stain. I didn't understand why at first, until I realized she was trying to provoke something. A reaction. A fight. Anything to remind her she still had some grip on the steering wheel. But I gave her nothing. Instead, I asked her one question as she passed by me in the hallway. Did he know you were married? She stopped, froze, her back still to me. Who? She asked, but it was too late. Her voice cracked, and that crack told me everything. I didn't need names. I didn't need timelines or receipts. The truth was finally bleeding out from the seams of her performance. She stood there, back rigid, trying to swallow her own guilt like it was a mouthful of glass. She didn't answer the question. She walked into the bathroom and slammed the door. Later that night, she tried a different tactic. She sat next to me on the couch like nothing happened. Too close. Her legs crossed toward me, her hand brushing against mine like she was casually testing if the skin still recognized hers. You ambushed me, she said. That was cruel. I looked at her, finally, and said, so was the last 6 months. She didn't argue. She just looked down, mouth tightening, like she was choking on words she didn't have the courage to say. Maybe she thought about apologizing. Maybe she was calculating whether it was worth it. But nothing came. Just the same empty stare. I stood up and walked to the bedroom, leaving her there on the couch with the TV, playing some show neither of us watched anymore. I didn't shut the door behind me. I didn't need to. For the rest of the night, I lay awake and listened to her pace. Back and forth, from the kitchen to the living room. At one point, I heard her crying, the quiet kind, almost careful, like she didn't want me to hear it. But I did, and I didn't move, because the woman crying in the other room wasn't the woman I married, and she didn't need comfort. She needed to sit in it. By Sunday morning, the phone calls started. They weren't from me, and they weren't from Nolan, the man she brought to the party, the one who vanished into thin air the moment everything cracked. They were from the other people in her orbit, the ones who hadn't been in on the lie, the ones who watched her face turn pale under the soft glow of vineyard lights and couldn't figure out why. I didn't ask what they said. I didn't have to. I could see it in the way she held her phone differently now, not like a weapon or a mirror, but like it might bite her if she held it too tightly. She walked from room to room like a woman trying to find the one spot in the house where shame couldn't follow. By the afternoon, she was on the balcony, pacing, whispering. I caught only fragments. It's personal. No, it's not what it looked like. And the classic, can we talk privately? Her voice, once smooth and curated, had a new edge to it, desperate, thin, a far cry from the woman who used to command rooms with a smile and 2 lies dressed in perfume. She didn't know how to operate in a space where she wasn't admired. That evening, she finally spoke to me again. Really spoke, not just accusations or defensive reflexes. She stood in the doorway of the office, arms crossed, but no armor in her eyes. She looked tired, not in the usual way. It wasn't exhaustion from overworking or a hangover. It was the look of someone finally realizing they'd been building a life out of cards, and the table just got kicked. They're asking questions, she said quietly. Let them, I replied, not even looking up from my laptop. She lingered like she wanted more from me, a reaction, an argument, anything. But I gave her the same thing I'd given her at the party. Space to sit in the truth. You think you're being noble, don't you? She asked. Like you're taking the high road. I finally looked up. No, I just stopped covering for you. That landed. I saw it hit her. She took a small step back like she needed more physical space to absorb it. For years, I'd been her human rug, soft, dependable, quietly absorbing her messes. But now, all at once, I'd become something else. Not vengeful, not cruel, just absent. Emotionally, spiritually. The man who once built her pedestal now refused to hold it steady. On Monday, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail came through. It was her boss. Apparently, someone had forwarded a photo, a snapshot taken at the party, blurry but clear enough. Delaney holding the ring box, staring at the note like it was a threat. In the background, Nolan stood frozen, watching her, hands awkwardly at his sides like he was trying to become invisible. The boss wanted to check in, said there were concerns. Something about professionalism, optics, conflict of interest. I listened to the voicemail twice, then deleted it. Not my problem anymore. She got the same call an hour later. This time, I heard her sobbing through the wall. Not quiet, not careful. The dam finally broke. I didn't go to her. I stayed where I was, listening to the sound of her losing control, not because I wanted her to suffer, but because she needed to hear it for herself. The mess was real. It had weight. And for the first time, she couldn't pin it on me. Later that night, she stood in the kitchen, leaning on the counter like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She didn't look at me. Her voice was almost inaudible when she said, "I think I really ruined everything." And that was the first true thing she'd said in a long, long time. But I didn't tell her it was okay. I didn't tell her we'd get through it. Because we wouldn't. Because I wouldn't. Not this time. Something shifted in the air. Not in a dramatic, movie scene kind of way. Not with shouting or slamming doors. It was quieter than that, like a room losing heat. You don't notice it at first. But eventually, your fingers start to go numb, and you realize you're cold. Not because the thermostat changed, but because something fundamental is missing. That's what the house became, cold. Delaney started talking more, ironically, about nothing. About groceries, a neighbor's new fence, some dry joke her coworker made. She started leaving music on in the background, low, always jazz, like she thought it would fill the silence. But the silence wasn't in the room. It was between us. She was afraid of it now. The silence. She moved around the house like a guest, trying to touch things that used to mean something. One morning, I found her standing in front of our wedding photo, the one she used to insist on displaying in the hallway like a trophy. She stood there for 15 minutes. I know because I was watching the clock while pretending to scroll through my phone. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just stared at it like she was waiting for the glass to crack. It never did. But something in her did. That same day, she asked if I wanted to go to dinner. "Just us," she said, her voice soft, fragile. No pressure. I told her no. She didn't ask why. She just nodded like she expected it. And maybe she had. Maybe she knew that once the dam breaks, all you're left with is debris. The walls of that house were once filled with rituals, inside jokes, familiarity. But now every room felt like a waiting room. She tried to cook one night. Pasta, her signature. She set the table, lit candles, poured wine like it was an anniversary. But when I sat down, she barely ate. She watched me instead, eyes darting between my face and the ring finger I kept bare now. "You haven't asked me anything," she said finally. "You haven't asked if I slept with him." I didn't answer at first. I just kept chewing. "Doesn't it matter to you?" she pushed. "Don't you want to know?" And I finally looked her dead in the eye and said, "I already know enough." She blinked, stunned, as if that hurt more than a yes or no ever could. Because it wasn't about the act. It never was. It was about the erosion. The slow decay of every vow, every soft promise. It was about knowing she'd already left long before she physically did. After that, she stopped trying to pull me back in. Instead, she started shrinking. I could see it in the way she sat on the couch, curled in tighter, as if she could disappear inside her own bones. She started sleeping on the edge of the bed, too, as if scared to be accused of invading space. I didn't move closer. We coexisted like ghosts, bound to the same square footage, but haunting different memories. The worst part? She still kept wearing the necklace he gave her. I noticed it one morning while she was making coffee. A thin silver chain with a tiny pendant shaped like a feather. She once told me she hated feathers, that they reminded her of messes. But now she wore it like it grounded her. She must have caught me staring at it, because her hand shot up, clutching it reflexively like it was some sacred thing. "He didn't matter," she said quickly, like she'd rehearsed it. "I didn't ask," I replied, and walked out of the room. She didn't follow. That night, I started packing a bag. Not loudly, not as some statement. Just one small suitcase. Essentials. The rest could stay. I didn't need a dramatic exit. I just needed the right moment to walk out of the house we both stopped calling home. And I decided when that moment would be. It wouldn't be in rage. It wouldn't be in front of her tears. It would be the morning after she stopped pretending. Because even liars get tired eventually. The last morning came without a storm. No shouting. No final confrontation. Just a beam of morning light slipping through the curtains and catching the edge of my packed bag, the one I'd left unzipped near the door. I stood in the kitchen, sipping the last cup of coffee I'd ever make in that house. She was still asleep, or pretending to be. We both knew what day it was. There was no need for a note. Everything had already been said, or left unspoken long enough to lose its shape. I didn't need her apology anymore. I didn't even need the truth. I had found something better, clarity. I walked through the room slowly, not like a man escaping, but like someone saying goodbye to a version of himself he no longer needed to be. The hallway photos, the blanket we bought on our second anniversary, the chipped mug she never used, they weren't symbols of love anymore. They were just things. Leftovers from a life that had quietly expired months ago. But here's the part one didn't expect, the part that changed everything. As I picked up my keys, ready to step out, I heard her behind me. Barefoot, quiet, no makeup, no pretense. Just her. She didn't cry. She didn't ask me to stay. Instead, she said, "You were the only honest thing in my entire life. I'm sorry I couldn't meet you there." I didn't turn around right away. That voice, stripped of performance, stripped of defense, was unfamiliar. Real, finally. It took me a second to breathe through it. "I know," I said softly. "And I hope you find your way to that version of yourself someday. For your sake." She nodded. I think she was grateful I didn't twist the knife. I think she knew this ending, quiet and clean, was more merciful than she deserved. I left without slamming the door. And as I drove away, I didn't feel angry, or bitter, or broken. I felt light. I moved into a small rental a few towns over. Nothing fancy, just a place where I could breathe. I bought a second-hand couch, started cooking for myself again, took walks without checking the time. I even signed up for a writing workshop at the community center, something I'd wanted to do for years but always postponed because she thought it was a waste of time. A few weeks later, I found an old notebook tucked in my moving box. On the first page, written in my own handwriting from years ago, was a list titled, "Things I Want to Feel Again. Love, safety, excitement, peace." And for the first time in a long time, I realized something. I was finally starting to feel all of them again. Not because she came back, but because I did. And this time, I wasn't leaving myself behind.